intend to read that and give a little timeline. But before we vote on that, I intend to ask any citizen that would like to address the court to have time to do so. I think it's important that you know that we listen and are responsive. I do that every day. I'm here every day and answer phone and emails and such, and value input from the citizens of Scott County. So we're glad you're here. Definitely want to make sure you know that we welcome that. We also were going to do a moment of silence for Georgetown firefighter Johnny Jacobs as well. He passed away last night. So it's 9 o'clock, I believe, so we can start our agenda. And I'd like to ask Stacy Hamilton, Fiscal Court Clerk, to call the roll.
Mr. Hostetler?
Here.
Mr. Lyons?
Here.
Mr. Wallace?
Here.
Mr. Corman?
Present.
Mr. Ellison?
Here.
Mr. Burke?
Here.
Mr. Livingston? Mr. Marshall?
Here.
Judge Covington?
Here. At this time, I'd like everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like everyone to join the court and myself in a moment of silence for Johnny Jacobs, who passed away last night. Thank you all. This time, I'd like to go to number 4 on our agenda, the minutes as presented. Are there any questions or discussion in regards to the minutes as they were presented?
Motion to approve is presented.
We have a motion from Mr. Lyons and a second from Mr. Hostetler. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next, we have the transfers as presented in your packet. Are there any questions or discussions in regards to those transfers as presented?
Motion.
Motion from Mr. Corman. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second from Mr. Wallace. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Motion. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next, number 6, bills and hand checks as presented in your packet. Any questions or discussion in regards to those as presented? Is there a motion? Motion for Mr. Lyons. Is there a second for Mr. Burke? Any other questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. That leads us to number 7, Resolution 20-01, Second Amendment Affirmation. Let me just share a little bit of a timeline. Right before Christmas, I had a few emails, a couple Facebook messages asking me about if I knew anything about the Second Amendment Sanctuary Initiative. I replied, said I'd do some research and then go from there. Last Friday at court, we had a conversation and a discussion at court during our work session related to the initiative. On Tuesday, I shared a draft of a resolution in affirmation of the Second Amendment that the court could consider today. It is my complete belief that everyone on this court stands by the Constitution and the Second Amendment, and that resolution just voices that and shares that same sentiment with our leaders in Frankfort and Washington as well. So at this time, I'm going to ask Rand to read that resolution, and then we'll take any comment or questions from anyone in the audience.
Resolution 20-01, an affirmation of the Second Amendment. A resolution affirming Scott County's commitment to supporting the rights granted by the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Whereas the Constitution of the United States is the supreme law of our nation, whereas the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States states, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Whereas the Scott County Fiscal Court wishes to express and resolve its affirmation of the rights granted by the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, now therefore be it resolved by the Scott County Fiscal Court. The Scott County Fiscal Court is committed to supporting the rights granted by the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, including but not limited to the lawful right of the citizens of Scott County to keep and bear arms. Resolved by the Scott County Fiscal Court this 10th day of January, 2020.
Is there any questions or comments from anyone on the court? Anyone from our audience that would like to address the court with any comments or questions? Yeah, if you would step to the podium and just state your name and welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Brandon Goldie, graduated here in '07. Also, just want to take the time right now to thank you all for letting us come in here and do this today. It's very important, I think. And also, I think it's very important that you all understand that we're here because we're concerned. It's pretty simple, right? So my issue is that I read your article in the paper, and that's one of my biggest issues I have. I appreciate you stepping up and at least making the initiative to make it seem as if we're protected under the Second Amendment. But in reality, I think the majority of us are here for a reason. Most of Scott County didn't show up because they read that and they felt good about it. They felt at ease. So they didn't show up today, or they had to work and all the other things. But these people are here because they read it and they seen something very different probably. And my guess is they seen what I seen. And what I seen was no guarantee of our constitutional rights given to us by God. All I seen was a statement saying that hopefully, I will give you the exact words you used, sir. And your exact word was anticipate.
You're going to have to help me.
Yeah, so in your article, you said that you talked to all the legislators in our state, and you said you don't anticipate that any legislation.
In my conversation with Senator Thayer, Savannah Maddox, Mark Hart, and Philip Pratt were the first people that I went to because they are our direct representatives in Frankfort. And I have full confidence in them and their support of the Second Amendment. I do. And I have to go on that as what I feel like as the most direct way that I can influence who's going to take a vote. And that's the path that I took. And, you know, I voiced my support of the Second Amendment, and I voiced my support of the Constitution in general.
Yes, sir.
And that's just what I did. This court cannot go there, you know, with the sanctuary movement in Virginia, that's true sanctuary ordinance would be asking this court to make an ordinance that would violate state statute, and we cannot do that. And we felt like the best and most prudent way to approach it is to go directly to the people that would be making the vote and voice our concerns. The same thing you are concerned about. We share and value the same values you do. But my approach was to go directly to those folks that would be voting and share our concern. And then with this resolution, I will share that directly. I will put it in each one of their hand and let them know how the court feels. And in our mind, we're representing the state, representing the county in that respect. And listening to the county, taking feedback from citizens like yourself, I think that's our job. And then we have to make decisions on how to approach. That was what my decision was and how to approach. And then with this resolution, in support and affirmation, that's how we chose to move forward.
Thank you, sir. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate that.
All right.
Also, what I want to bring up is, you know, I understand that, you know, you went out your way and you went to them, you spoke to them, but you said that, you know, you're worried about the state government, the repercussions that would happen if you put out a Second Amendment sanctuary that you
Ordinance, if we did it, yes.
right now. But my issue is that if we have to worry about the state and what they're going to do to us as a county because of our Second Amendment rights, then that's an issue in itself. I'm going to be honest, you know, I'm 31 years old. I graduated here, but I have my Second Amendment rights violated by the city as well. And I got everything off expunged, but I went through $15,000 of my own money to do so. So everybody up here that's, that's talking and stuff, you all live a life that you never walked in my shoes, So until you had your Second Amendment rights violated by a county, you'll never understand where I'm coming from. And that's fine, I respect that. But I hope you all can also respect that I'm very passionate about this, and I promise you I will not stop. I will not stop until I know that every citizen in this county, in this state, and in this country is given all their rights back, because I don't know where you all been or where everybody else has been. I don't know if y'all are asleep or what, but this country is turning its back on us. And no matter what anybody tries to say and tries to spin it, when you throw it up in the air and it hits the ground, it hits the same exact way. This country is turning upside down. And this Second Amendment right is very, very close to our hearts, because we know for a fact it's not just for hunting, it's for the government. Let's be real, people. This is not, it's not a game. All the legislation getting passed, we're getting tired of it. We don't care about the legislation no more. We want stuff done. We want action taken. We don't have time for the games anymore, for all the talks, the county meetings. We should not even be here.
I would ask you, what do you propose as a next step?
Yes, sir.
And you're correct. I will tell you, I don't pretend or to for a second to say that I've walked in your
You'll
shoes.
take a very high risk, sir.
And-
I'll go ahead and tell you, you take a very high risk.
Well-
if you really want to do what's right. But I'll be honest.
I'm asking, what do you propose as a next step?
In your amendment, it needs to be very, very, very clear, not vague at all. There should be no vague wording whatsoever. It needs to be very clear of how we stand. When I heard him read that, in my heart, I didn't feel it. There's so much room for them to come in and change stuff. The way that y'all use your verbiage, I understand it.
Well, tell me what you would like to.
This is what I would like. I would like for you 100% to say the county of Scott County will not, under any circumstances, that kind of thing. You need to make it very plain as day.
Well,
and cut-
we'll have to agree to disagree on the approach. I respect your, 100% respect your.
They look at that and they turn it over, sir.
Well, that might be the case, but I had to choose a path. I chose the path,
I respect
and I respect, and I hope you respect that we're listening to you. But we just have to disagree about our approach. We're on the same team, but our approach is just a little bit different. And I'll always listen, and you're welcome to call me anytime.
I'll be honest about something. I just want to tell everybody's in the room. I want to be honest about this, because the worst part about this all is it took everything in my power to come here today, because I don't trust anybody in here. I've been done wrong.
I'm sorry you're in that spot.
I don't want no sympathy. That's not who I am. I don't want that at all. But what I do want you all to understand is that this is coming from my heart. This ain't some made-up story. This ain't something that I'm just coming over here to try to create chaos. It's not that.
Oh.
I'm very close to my Lord.
Well.
And this is very close to me and him both.
Right.
So I hope you all can take it into consideration.
Thank you for your time. Anyone else like to address the court? Yes, sir. Just step forward and state your name, please.
I may want to come back when I hear your answer, but right now, my name is Scott Mitchell. I'm a county resident. I do have a question. It seems that the crux of this might be something to do with the state, that we might be overstepping the state, and I'd just like for you to explain how that is so that we'll know.
Bill, would you like to address that?
There is no provision in the Constitution. There is no provision in federal law. There is no provision in state law. And there is no provision in county law that allows us to declare ourselves a sanctuary. Okay? If we declare ourselves a sanctuary county for the Second Amendment, next week someone will want us to declare ourselves a sanctuary county for illegal immigration. Okay? We don't have that right to declare ourselves a sanctuary county. Okay? We enforce the Second Amendment. Scott, I've got a concealed carry permit. I spent 26 years in the Army. I have seen the carnage brought by an unarmed population against an armed government. I have a federal firearms license. I don't think you'll find anybody up here more passionate about this than I am. The problem is what you're asking us to do has no basis in law for what you want. Now, you can say, well, gosh, they can change the Second Amendment. Sure they can. It takes a constitutional convention. We haven't had one in over 200 years. We're probably not going to have one, okay? So what you're asking us to do...
Wait
Let me
just
finish.
a second. You're welcome to address the court.
What you're asking us to do has no basis in law, has no emphasis in law, and if we declare ourselves a sanctuary county, we can't enforce it. The sheriff can't enforce it. So what you're asking us to do is impossible. We're affirming your right to the Second Amendment. We can do that. But to ask us to violate federal law, state law, and everything else is just plain stupid. And I got to tell you, stupid's got to stop somewhere, okay? It's got to stop. We can't continue down this path. Next, you want us to be a sanctuary county for illegal immigration, a sanctuary county for food stamps. It can't go on. We can't do that. That's why we're having this conversation today.
Okay, let me address that then. If we're talking about something that is in case law or something like that, we're not asking you to do anything to go against something that is already set as constitutional. We're asking you to affirm something that is constitutional.
And we have.
Using as an example, illegal immigration, this has been used to go against constitutional principles. We're asking you to just affirm something. So we're not saying, I mean, there's a complete difference between saying we want you to name us a sanctuary county for something that is reaffirming our rights. That is different than, say, San Francisco saying we want to be a sanctuary city for harboring illegal aliens against our Constitution because we feel good about it. Totally, there's apples and oranges there. And so this would be akin to saying we for the life of unborn babies, because that is a constitutional right, even though the Supreme Court has, ruled something that sounds different. So what I'm saying is under the examples that you give, there is no conflict with the state or with the federal in this, because you're affirming something that is constitutionally there already.
And this resolution confirms that.
And I like most of what I heard with the resolution. I do want to address something different with that resolution, and it's something that I thought I heard, and I'm not sure about the wording, so you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong in it. I thought I heard that you said a couple of times rights granted by the Constitution of the United States. And if I heard that in there, then something does need to be changed with that, because our Constitution doesn't grant us any rights. Our Constitution affirms that the federal government is prohibited from interfering with God-given rights that we already had before the Constitution was written. And so if we want to keep it that, we've got rights granted from the Constitution, then that is much easier to just say, okay, let's change that, as opposed to saying God granted us rights and nobody can take them away.
We use that verbiage because we couldn't get a note from God fast enough.
Well, we don't need one from it.
I know, so we use the Constitution to fall back.
If you're saying our Constitution grants us rights, then you're telling something wrong.
With all due respect, the message is what we need to focus on. And the message is to Frankfurt and Washington and our elected officials in those two areas, that this body supports and affirms the Second Amendment. That's the message. And we're all together on that message. And we can't major in the minors. And I agree with what you're saying. I understand what the verbiage of the difference. But we can wordsmith and pick things apart. The message is this: we affirm and we hold dear and tight and support the Second Amendment, period. That's that's our message. And I would hope that everyone in this room would respect that and support that. And if we have differences in how the wording is, but the main thing is the message. And that's my statement there. So
I hope we really are on the same team as you say, and I kind of believe that we are.
Well, you can go to bed tonight and you know that I support the Second Amendment, and I will oppose any legislation that would infringe, and I will reach out and follow the paths that have been used for years and years to oppose legislation that people don't support. And there are processes that are set in place that we can go about and oppose items or support items that are of concern to us. So to answer your question, we're in the same boat.
I hope we are. I'll just say that I don't think it's a small thing to say, if that's what it said, that our rights come from the Constitution. That is not a small thing.
Judge,
because our
Alvin?
rights do not come from the Constitution.
I think a simple word change would address this issue. Instead of saying rights granted by the Second Amendment, say
Recognized by the
protected by the Second
Yeah,
Amendment.
or protected by the
So-
Constitution.
So
or
Alvin, would you like to amend that resolution to say,
either recognized by the Constitution or protected by the Constitution, one of those, because granted is totally unacceptable. But I will say, I do believe what you're saying, that you all are on the same page, but you got to understand, we want something a little more, because Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi say they believe in the Second Amendment. We want something that says you will protect us if we are, infringed by our own government, because that's what the Second Amendment is all about. Thank you.
thank you. So there's a motion.
There's two places there that it's.
Yes, there's two places. Actually, three.
Is it three? Okay.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. Would you state your name?
Resident here, Scott County.
Do you need a second on that amendment?
We need a
first?
second from Mr. Hostetler. So we have, we really,
Yeah, we can hold on.
we can hold off after that, until after they speak.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Owens.
I just want to bring up a couple points. One of them is, what is the difference between resolve and sanctuary?
The
I know what sanctuary means. It's a safe place.
sanctuary, the way I understand it is that we're going to ignore any federal or state law that would be passed that would not be in line with the Second Amendment. And anybody on this court can correct me or such, but that's been my understanding. And that's the crux of the issue. This body cannot ignore federal or state law that we're duty bound. I took an oath to follow and uphold the Constitution, and I cannot ignore any law, federal or state.
I understand all that, but still, to my question, what is the difference between resolve and sanctuary? To me, you're actually saying more that you're going to go against the state than using the word sanctuary. Sanctuary is just a safe place, knowing everybody's on the same page. Resolve, to me, most of us, we don't understand what you're saying when you want to resolve the issue.
Well, we're affirming the rights protected by the Second Amendment. We're going to change the wording, take out granted, and we're affirming those rights protected. That's what this body's doing, and communicating to Frankfurt that if they want to consider any legislation that would infringe upon the Second Amendment rights, that we are opposed to that, and we are affirming that, by saying we affirm those rights protected by the Second Amendment, we are in support of that. So that's my best answer.
I understand that, but here's another point. So you all know about the movement in Virginia, and it's spread into Kentucky, where people, like the others have said, people are worried about their rights, especially the Second Amendment right. So that's why all this has come forward for people to unite and get on the same page. So right now we have 28 counties in Kentucky, as of last night, that have passed sanctuary to a status.
Now, Craig, I'll interrupt you.
All right.
And I took the map off of the 2A Sanctuary Kentucky United page, and I made a list yesterday, and there was 28 on there. Didn't have time, but I asked Jared Holland, right there sitting behind you. I said, Jared, call these counties and ask them for a copy of their of what they've passed, their sanctuary,
Their ordinance.
none of them were ordinances. All of them are resolutions. The only ordinance is in Marshall County, Kentucky. They passed a first reading. That first reading, they then, after they did it, hit the brakes because concerns about legality. They have met with Daniel Cameron, our Attorney General, and a posting on their website says that they are revising what they're doing and will get back with the community within the first few weeks. So out of the 10, I don't know how many Jared actually got, but there's 10 or 12 that I have copies right here. Anderson County, Spencer County, Grant County, Pendleton, Bracken, Casey, Boyd, Hopkins, Hancock. I don't have copies of all of them. I got about 10. They're all resolutions. Some of them have the word sanctuary in it, but not all of them. So I would say I want to fact check the 2A United information. And I'm not saying, I'm not trying to be belligerent, but I have done my due diligence. And these are resolutions. They are not ordinances, and the only ordinance I'm aware of is out of Marshall, and it's been paused. So I feel like this court and this body's done its due diligence gathering the data and information. And you know, I want to make sure that what we're doing is legal and right, and I think what we're doing, and I've conferenced with Rand, and Rand's our county attorney, and this was the path that I think you recommended as well.
Yes, sir.
So I'll be happy to share this with you, and they are resolutions, and some of them use the term sanctuary. It's a term.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's a term that's brought a lot of people together. So that's why, you know, from the citizen standpoint, when they hear that you're a sanctuary county, that means everybody in their elected officials, their representatives are on board with the movement that's sweeping, and it's going to end up sweeping the nation eventually because people are just fed up with the threat of taking away your rights. I mean, it's coming. It's already started. We can pretend it's not going to happen, but it's going to happen. And there's, you know, nobody wants a fight. That's the last thing, but people need to stand up for their rights. But that's what uniting all these people is that word.
And I respect it, and please know that we both value the Second Amendment. Our approach is just different, and by my doing my due diligence, and I fully intend to reach out to Rand Paul and Senator McConnell as well, and Andy Barr. I think it's very important, and to voice our stance in support and affirmation, like we have done today with this resolution.
Yes, because you know we realize we're actually only an executive order away from chaos.
An executive order by who?
Well, the governor, he can push legislation without.
We have super majorities, and we can veto any
They're already trying to start to push stuff. We have a super majority.
Well, and I do.
What happens in 2020?
Well, you got to remain vigilant, and you got to remain on top of it. And you got to keep positive. You got to keep communicating a positive message about what you feel like is important, and that's what I'll do. And I would encourage you to do the same. That's what I think is the best and most prudent approach. And then go to the ballot.
Yes.
Go to the ballot and vote your values.
In this county for voting is pathetic.
So I appreciate your time, and you know, you and I talked on the phone, and we emailed back and forth, and anybody can pick up the phone, call me, or come see me. Thank you.
Judge?
Yes, sir.
Can I get a word?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I just kind of wanted, I think I know where everybody's coming from, and I think I'm on board with everybody. But you keep talking about Virginia, and this is my fault. I've not done the research. I have heard a little bit about, but you're talking about where the governor, correct, of Virginia is pushing. And so you guys are being vigilant about our Commonwealth, which I agree with. And I think that's really the difference, but it's not different. I think we're trying to cover that. But is that, he's actually done something, and which it's my fault, but I'm not knowledgeable of it. When the emails started coming, I was on vacation, kind of out of the loop. What particular thing are they doing in Virginia? I would just, if you have a nutshell version.
The biggest issues they're doing is taking away semi-automatic weapons. You know, the media's made everybody led to believe that an AR-15, anything semi-automatic, it looks dangerous, shouldn't be on the street. Well, gun owners know that that's not right. I mean, 22s are semi-automatic. Hunters and outdoorsmen, sporting enthusiasts know that that's.
So are they specifically attacking their?
They've got bills out that are, and they're going to try to take all semi-automatic weapons, ban high-capacity magazines, as they call them, ammo. They're going after ammo. They're going after gun ranges, and that just happened in a very short period of time after a vote. Now, I know the people of Virginia should have went and voted. It's their fault. It's the voters' fault for letting it happen. But that stuff is slowly gotten a grip in this country, and it's spreading. You know, all of our major cities and stuff are, you know, if you want to go to New York, to me, a big city like that's dangerous. I want to pack my gun, because I know what goes on up there, but you can't. So how does something like that get a foothold in this country when we have a Second Amendment right? It's because we've let it get a hold of it. And what we're doing is getting together to try to start making that turn, you know?
And I respect that, and I think in my opinion, the most prudent way is communication with your elected officials and going to the ballot and staying vigilant.
That's it.
And I support that, and will assist in any way if I feel like there is legislation being presented that would infringe on our rights. And I would vocally oppose that, and I would go to Frankfurt and voice my opinion. And I think that's the best way as a collective group. You have a large collective group, I believe, and respect that 100%. And I hope today you feel like this body has listened and given you an opportunity to speak and be heard. And I think that's what government should be about. It's for the people, by the people, and we need to listen to the people. And that's what we're doing today. And I hope anybody in this room would say that, leaving here today. So
one thing that I would like to request is how you explained it to us about resolve and sanctuary. Could you put that in a statement showing in a little bit more detail why?
Rand, could you help me craft why the sanctuary would be?
If I understand what you're asking.
For the people, you know, for the citizens when they look at it.
So,
right now,
so in my statement that I
resolve, you're not doing anything.
Well, because what you're asking for, we can't do in an ordinance, has to be done by resolution. We resolved.
let me share from my statement that I shared earlier. KRS 65870 addresses the scope of authority that counties have in regard to regulations related to firearms. 65-870 prohibits counties from any part of the field of regulation, ownership, possession, or firearms of ammunition. The counties cannot make any ordinance in regards to that.
We're aware of that.
And that's why that we've chosen the path to go with a resolution versus the other path. So, would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you're asking is make sure nobody ignores the Second Amendment, the highest, law that we have in the Constitution. And I think this resolution says we're not going to let that happen. But we can't then turn around and ignore a state law either and pass an ordinance that is.
We are aware we can't have an ordinance.
Okay.
It's just all verbiage.
Yeah.
We don't expect an ordinance saying,
Well, when I use the word resolution or resolute, to me, resolute means I'm determined to do whatever.
That's exactly right.
Is that what you're
At the beginning, it sounds stronger to me, a resolution than a.
I'm not an English teacher. Might be a teacher up here, but you're correct. All jokes aside, I mean, I get it. It does matter what we say and what we write down. You're correct, because there are attorneys around that pick that stuff apart, and
We don't want anybody liable for anything. We just want everybody to unite.
But when I see resolved in here, that's what I'm thinking, but maybe other people don't. I see resolution, and resolution to me means when I say it.
It does mean, I understand that, but I'm talking for, I don't know how many, several thousand people that take that, after they've been hearing for months and months, sanctuary, and now it's got to the point where if you declare sanctuary, then you're with us. And then you come out, all of a sudden you come out with another word, resolve, it automatically throws up a roadblock.
Well, because resolve is all you're going to get.
Exactly. And it's the same thing as the sanctuary.
No, it's not the same thing as sanctuary.
But this is a
Verbal commitment.
This is a resolution affirming the Scott County's commitment to supporting the rights protected by the Second Amendment. It's the same message, and we'll have to. I hope that you respect that the court is trying to voice its support, and I think that's the bottom line. And if we get lost in the minutia verbiage, I think the court, and I like Mr. Lyons' recommendation to change the verbiage from granted to protected. I'm good with that. So, we're being responsive in that respect. I do think that the bottom line is that we support the same message. And
So hopefully when we leave here, I don't read in the next Georgetown news graphic that Scott County struck down the 2A sanctuary movement.
You never know what the news graphic's going to write, whether it's right or not. Now, you've been around long enough to know.
So there you go.
But you know where I'm coming from? That kind of stuff matters.
Oh, in our society, a problem with our society, and I'm guilty, but too many of us live at the gospel of Facebook, and we take it for granted, and we in the media, instead of doing our own due diligence, and it's fake news, and we should be more vigilant to dig deeper and get the facts. And I feel like that's my job, and I feel like I've done that on this. So I appreciate you coming here, and please know that my door's open anytime.
In essence, probably what you're going to see in the newspaper is a sanctuary resolution was not passed.
Well, I hope our paper does not do that.
Hey, Judge, one other comment. I personally am excited to see this room full. Somebody made the comment early on that the place should be packed out. Well, everybody's got their lives to live, and there are a lot of issues, because I'm concerned about what Virginia's doing with the right to life and how they're leading us down a path. That's my view. Subject for another day. Not really though, but I am thankful to see folks here, and you're welcome back anytime you want, and which helps us know the path you want us to go. So I'm glad to see you folks here.
Hi, good morning.
I'm Deborah Lunsford. I
Spoke to you yesterday, yes.
I spoke to Kelly Corman. A couple of things I'm noticing. We've been using ordinance, we've been using resolution. Ordinance, as I understand it, is legislation, which we cannot
It's a local law.
do that. But a resolution is a decision, that we've made, that we're going to back the Second Amendment and we're going to protect it. But I spoke to you yesterday and I said I felt like we needed to go further, and I did hear these words out of your mouth today, that you're against any further legislation to infringe our rights.
I would oppose any other legislation that would infringe upon our Second Amendment rights. And the way I would do that is the path of that I've described, I would go to my elected officials and voice my concerns, and I would gather support amongst my people that share my same belief, and we would do that. You spoke to me yesterday about adding language to the resolution, and I mentioned that to a couple people, and the flip side is by affirming, it's taken for granted that we oppose any infringement. That was the good conversation, but I'll let you continue.
Well, I feel like your resolution has to go further. I think it has to be stronger. Right now, it appears to be a little weak. I have no problem if you don't want to do the sanctuary terminology, because we don't want to be non-law-abiding people here. But I think you need to express that we don't feel like there should be any further infringement on the Second Amendment by further legislation. And you said you're against or you oppose.
Yes, I said that myself.
That needs to be in this. We're not for further infringement on this right. We want to leave it, the Second Amendment as it stands.
If the court wants to consider adding a whereas, I would certainly welcome their amendment. But it's the court and the body's decision.
As we talked about, there are 5 House bills, 1 Senate bill. Yes, they say they may not go anywhere, but anything can change in a further election. And the majority is going to change from one party to the next, and then things will change.
Yes.
And we don't want to keep coming up here and saying, hey, we've got to redo this resolution, make it strong to begin with.
And all I can do is control what I can control, and the jurisdiction that I have is in this county, and the path that I have to take is through our elected officials. And then that path that I control is by going to the ballot and encouraging like-minded individuals to go to the ballot.
Resolutions generally are saying what the body is for, not what it's against or what it's against in the future. It's a statement of the body collectively of what it's for.
So we're for leaving the Second Amendment intact with no further legislation.
Ma'am, the ordinance, or the resolution we're looking at says is committed to supporting the rights protected. I mean, it's pretty plain, concise. I mean, to me, it's straightforward. It says we're supporting the rights protected. I mean, you can add all kinds of language. We looked at several of these, some longer ones, but to me, this is clear, concise, and it says what we want it to say.
Thank you for coming, and I appreciate you taking the time to voice your concern.
Judge, one second, Ms. Lunsford. Because I kind of agree with Alvin, but I know where you're coming from. But I think it's hard for us to try to catch all that could happen. You know what I'm saying? Because you're right, there are several, even here in Kentucky, there are 3 or 4 or 5 House bills that have been proposed that I'm aware of. I don't know if they're going anywhere or not. I don't think they are, from what little bit I've seen in the language and our legislators that I know about that are down there now. But what you're saying is what could change. Somebody else could. I don't know how we're going to be able to, with our wording, attack it anymore. You know what I mean? Because if they do pass something down there, then we're still going to have to look at how we can fall in line with that. We'd have to see. It's hard to do that. For me, it's hard to do that. What's the word I'm thinking of? It's hard to do that. What if this happens? What if they pass this thing and it says this? It's hard for me to look down the road and try to pick all those off.
I just want the strongest resolution possible from our county government.
Yes, ma'am.
So that there's no question where we stand.
In my opinion, and I think our resolution clearly states where we stand. So, thank you.
Let's make it say
I think what
resolve. Let's say resolve.
Chip.
Good morning, Chip St. Charles. So first I want to say thanks for bringing us all here and having the resolution present. A couple of things that I want to clear up maybe for the group, for both sides here, is one is, let's say you pass the ordinance, the strongly worded, by God, we're not going to do anything.
We're not passing an ordinance.
What are the repercussions of it?
I could go to jail.
Okay, so you get removed from office.
And I don't want to go to jail.
Now, what is the process to replace you after that? Governor appointed?
You know, here, Chip, if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas.
No, well,
I don't want to play ifs and buts.
I'm trying to make a point that.
I know, and I respect that.
That you would be replaced by the governor, correct? Governor appointed?
I believe that's the case.
Still a
So,
special election, so.
let's think about.
Until a special election took place.
Before we ask the court to do something illegal, let's consider what the repercussions of that are. Next thing is, we've got not only this board of body, or this body here that's elected, but we have two more elected positions in the county that we can also influence and ask for Second Amendment, how we want the Constitution to be upheld. One of them is sitting here, and the county attorney has prosecutorial discretion, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
So he doesn't necessarily have to prosecute every case that comes before him. The second is the sheriff is also elected. The sheriff and his deputies don't have to arrest everybody for every violation of every law, correct?
We have discretion.
Yes. So, so the resolution says that everybody in this county supports, not everybody in the county, that this body supports the Second Amendment. The sheriff has made the statement that says he supports the Second Amendment. He doesn't support any law that violates the Second Amendment unless it's for an EVO, DVO. Everybody read his statement. I'm not going to put words in his mouth. I don't understand this body cannot do much more than what it's done now. Our next step for the group that wants to push this is to take the fight to Frankfurt and make sure that this supermajority that we have now, they can pass a statewide legislation that says we are not, Kentucky is going to uphold the Second Amendment. We're not going to enforce any federal laws. Because that goes back to the 10th Amendment, that we're allowed that. That was more of a statement than a question for you, but thanks for the resolution. That sends a statement that we as a county support it.
Thank you, Chip. Anyone else? And if not, then I would ask that, Miss Ma'am.
I'm not going to let you get away.
Okay, just state your name, please.
Kim Lynn, I've been a resident of Scott County since 1994, paying your taxes dutifully. I just want you guys to understand that this Second Amendment resolution and all of this talk about gun control, it's not just farmers, it's not just hunters. I don't hunt, I do farm, I have little chickens and goats and guineas, but I'm a mom who adamantly reserves the right to protect my children. This is so serious. I have family in Virginia that are losing that right. Now, which one of you are going to stand there and tell me I can't protect my girls?
It's not in my purview.
You are going to tell anybody in this room of citizens that are protecting their homes and their families when Frankfurt does something dumb like Virginia has done, sorry, you're not allowed to do that anymore. We have to take those guns for you. There's not enough sheriffs in Scott County to take the guns from these people. It's not going to happen. This is a very serious, it's not just something on Facebook. It's not something that's happening in New Zealand. This is happening in America. And I am appealing to every one of you to have the backbone and the heart that God gave you to protect your county and your citizens from any further infringements, from anything that's happening in Virginia from happening here in Scott County.
I think we've affirmed that as well. I appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Scott Mitchell again. I think I can provide some clarification in some of this. What you all are saying is, you believe in the Second Amendment, you'll protect the Second Amendment. I think what we're worried about is some of what this fellow here brought up, that, the government is not going to say, okay, you all, we've got to infringe on your Second Amendment rights, and we're going to make this law. Because I think you all would wholeheartedly stand up against it. What the government is going to do is they're going to come up with a law, like we've got thousands on the books, I guess, that infringes on our Second Amendment rights, but they're going to tell you it's not an infringement. We just need to do this for the safety of whoever or whatever, And it could be something with red flag. It could be something with the governor doing some kind of executive order. And what we need to understand is these rights have been chipped away little by little by our own government, And that is not what our founders intended. They intended, that's why when you read the Second Amendment, you know, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That means they weren't supposed to make the first gun law, but we've got a whole lot of them. Our state has reaffirmed our Bill of Rights. We have accepted that as a state as well as federal. They have said, and even it is somewhat of an infringement. Our state says we've got the right to bear arms to defend ourselves or the state, subject to the General Assembly to enact laws to prevent persons from carrying concealed firearms. So that's already a slight infringement. There was nothing in the federal about concealed firearms, but the state has accepted one. But it wasn't for gun control. This was from 1891. So you know, we've lived under this for a long time until we got our concealed carry law. But we don't want it to go any further than that. We don't want to hear that the governor has come up with an executive order that supposedly streamlines laws that are already on the books that say, you know, if somebody takes a certain medicine or somebody has been, you know, in some kind of medical place for more than 2 weeks, then, you know, the sheriff, you know, gets to come and confiscate their firearms because they might be a danger to other people or something. And I know we could sit here all day and we could come up with what ifs, and that's not what this is about, but I'm trying to let you all know this is what we fear as a citizenry. It's not the government saying we're going to infringe on your rights. It's them infringing on our rights and telling us they're not infringing on our rights and having you all make the decision as to whether you do anything about it or not. Now, our state houses, both of them, are controlled by people who I think would defend us. Rand Marshall, I think, would defend us. You, Mr. Covington, I think you would defend us. Tony Hampton, I've talked to him a number of times. I think he would defend us on something blatant like that. But will you all defend us if it's something that they're telling us is not an infringement, but it is? You know, the EPOs and things like that, that's already an infringement. And I'm not here for us to argue all of that, but I'm just saying that's what we fear as a citizenry, and where the rubber meets the road will be if something is passed by our state or by our federal that goes any other gun law. We want you to say we're not going to accept any more infringement on our Second Amendment, and we will fight for our citizens in this. And that's what we want, is to know that you're going to fight for us, not just that you're supporting the Second Amendment, because like I say, Hillary Clinton does that.
You served on active duty?
No, sir.
You served in the military?
No, sir.
Okay.
I'm just a regular guy.
Anybody who's ever served in the military or a veteran takes an oath of enlistment. And that oath of enlistment says that I will defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Amen, brother.
Okay. I served for 26 years. My retirement from active service did not absolve me from that oath. Any veteran we have in this room has not been absolved of that oath. The people up here on this fiscal court took an oath very similar to that when we took our oath of office. So that alone tells us that we will defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Article 2A is a part of the Constitution. Okay, so I'm playing with words here. But you folks need to understand, I'm very passionate about this. I spent 26 years in the Army. I have a federal firearms license. I have a Kentucky concealed carry permit. And I'm a passionate 2A guy, okay? But you're asking us to do something that has no basis or foundation in law that we can do. A resolution is all we can do. And we cannot use the word sanctuary because there is no provision in federal or state law for us to declare ourselves a sanctuary county. So we're doing the best we can and giving you everything we can within the limits of the law.
Well,
And I can't play what if, and I can't play what Governor Beshear might think he can do, and I can't play, you know, well, what's the Senate going to do in the House of Representatives? If you want to make your voice heard in Frankfort, I suggest you contact the people in Frankfort, because as a county, we are powerless in this endeavor.
So with that said, unless anyone is adamant about speaking, I want to call the question. Anyone else?
I would like for us to say a little more something about we resolve, like you said a while ago, that you would add in a whereas. We resolve that we will not accept any more infringement on our Second Amendment.
And as Mr. Wallace said, the statement, it's what we're supporting. And we can get in here and wordsmith and we can pick things apart. I do think the edit was correct in changing from granted to protected, and I think it's time to move on.
Appreciate that.
And out of respect for everybody in here in the court. So there's been a motion to amend and remove granted and change it to protected, and there was a second. Is there any other questions or discussion?
Who was second?
The second was from Mr. Hostetler. Is there any other questions or discussion? With that said, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. I appreciate that, and I'm glad. Thank you all. With that said, we will move to number 8, sheriff's fees. Let the record reflect that $1,063,986.87 were submitted by our sheriff. Anything else there? Any questions? Sheriff's fee estimate, 2020 budget report, number 9. I would ask Rand to reflect that or share that.
The 2020 fee account budget estimate is $1,770,600.
Any questions in regards or discussion? Motion for Mr. Lyons. Is there a second? Second for Mr. Burke. Any other questions or discussions? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion passes unanimously. Sheriff's salary cap. This has to be submitted to the state. The budget committee met. Alvin Lyons, David Livingston, myself, and our treasurer, Michelle Ray. And the budget salary cap for the sheriff's department, the 2020 proposed annual would be $2,333,233.08. Any questions or discussions in regards to that dollar figure? All those in favor, or is there a motion? I got to have a motion. Motion for Mr. Lyons. Is there a second? Second for Mr. Corman. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously to accept that. Next on our agenda is the clerk's fees. Let it record reflect that $85,407.32 was submitted by our clerk, Rebecca Johnson. Number 12 on our agenda, clerk fees estimate, 2020 budget report. I'd ask Rand Marshall to share that.
The beginning balance, $15,058,222. Total disbursements year-to-date, $13,519,04. And projected clerk fees for 2020, $1,539,218.
Any questions or discussion related to that presentation? Is there a motion to accept as presented? Motion for Mr. Burke. Is there a second? Second for Mr. Ellison. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, we would go to our clerk salary cap. Once again, our budget committee of Alvin Lyons, David Livingston, and Michelle Ray and myself met with staff from the clerk's office as well. And the number that needs to be presented as a salary cap for 2020 budget would be $715,943.35. Any questions or discussion?
Motion to approve, and just make one comment. The sheriff and the clerk both came in under their cap last year, so I just wanted to...
I'm very positive, and I respect that and appreciate you pointing that out. So we have a motion to approve. We have a second from anyone? Second from Mr. Wallace. Any other question or discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving down to EMS surplus, number 14, Brandon Remley. Thank you for being here.
Morning, Judge, Magistrates. Hopefully you received in an email one item that I would like to declare junk. It's a clothes dryer. We've had it since 2006, and
It's all used up.
Any questions on that clothes dryer? Any mechanics in the audience? Is there a motion to declare that? Mr. Hostetler, a second from Mr. Ellison.
Boy, you're getting
All those in
I got
favor?
junk all the time.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Ethics Board appointment. I am pleased to announce and nominate Edna Pursley to the Ethics Board. Edna has served in the PVA as a deputy PVA for 15 years, active in her church, just a stellar citizen and great human being. And I think many of you know her, and she's willing to serve on the Ethics Board. Any questions or discussions about that nomination? Motion for Mr. Wallace, a second for Mr. Hostetler. Any other questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. County Attorney Employee Promotion. At this time, I'll turn it over to Rand Marshall.
Judge, we've had recently retirement, Beverly Parker, who's been a long-time employee in our Child Support Division. She was the head of the department. Unfortunately, she's had to retire and take care of her husband. My request is to promote Diane Gibson, who's essentially been second in charge and been filling in while Bev's been out some, to that position, the head of child support. In talking with Jeff, and you all may want to ask him about this, what we've thought about is, as opposed to a hourly payment of $27.33, which totals on an annual basis $49,740, we make Diane a salaried employee at $50,000. That makes sense to me. I see her down there at nights and on Saturdays, so she's working more than just the set hours, and does a great job, as did Beverly, quite honestly. So that's my request, to promote her to that position with a salary of $50,000 and make her a salaried employee.
What questions or discussions do you all have for Rand or Jeff? Mr. Burke.
So moved.
So moved. A second from Mr. Hostetler. Any other questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Now, we have 3 ordinances, for 2 for second reading and then 1 for first reading. The second reading would be in regards to 19-12 regarding Weisenberger Mill Road, and Rand will read that, and then we'll entertain any questions or discussion.
Ordinance number 19-12, an ordinance banning commercial motor vehicle traffic on the Weisenberger Mill Bridge. Whereas a new bridge has been constructed on Weisenberger Mill Road between Scott County and Woodford County, and whereas in the past commercial motor vehicles have used the bridge on Weisenberger Mill Road and have caused damage to the bridge, whereas the Woodford County Fiscal Court has banned commercial motor vehicles from using the bridge to preserve the same, whereas the Scott County Fiscal Court desires to preserve the bridge as well. Now therefore it is hereby ordained by the Scott County Fiscal Court as follows. Section 1, all commercial motor vehicles are hereby banned from use of the Weisenberger Mill Road Bridge. Section 2, commercial motor vehicle, quote, as used in this ordinance shall mean a motor vehicle or combination motor vehicle used in commerce that is A, designed to carry property and have a gross vehicle weight rating as determined by federal regulation which has been adopted into Cabinet Administrative Regulations pursuant to KRS Chapter 13A. B, designed to transport 16 or more passengers, including the driver. C, transporting hazardous materials and is required to be placarded in accordance with Title 49 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 172, or any other vehicle that is required by Cabinet Administrative Regulation pursuant to KRS Chapter 13A to be operated by a licensed commercial driver. However, the following shall not be included in the definition of a, quote, commercial motor vehicle: school buses, fire trucks, ambulances, and vehicles used for agricultural purposes. Section 3, the Scott County Road Department shall post a sign stating, quote, no commercial motor vehicles, or similar language in an appropriate location in Scott County prior to approaching the bridge. Section 4, this order shall become effective upon its passage and publication as required by law. First reading was December 23rd, 2019. Adopted today, assuming you do January 10th, 2020.
What questions or discussion are there? Is there a motion? Motion from Mr. Lyons to approve. Is there a second? Question? Yes, sir.
I have a question real quick. Just listening over there, I haven't seen the ordinance up to this point, but from our standpoint, does the ordinance include any type of penalty for violation of the ordinance?
It does not, no, not at this point.
Probably should.
We can add one,
And the reason I ask is at some point, somebody's gonna say that's what you're gonna do about crossing the bridge. The only thing we can tell them is tell them not to.
One of the things, Gerald, when we looked at adopting this, we kind of replicated what Woodford County was doing, and I don't believe, Rand, that they had a penalty per se in place in their ordinance. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that on the Woodford County side, they didn't have that language included.
and if that's a court's pleasure, we can do it. Probably what we, at least if we can do it quickly, we could make this a first reading, because I think that's a substantial change, and put a penalty in there if the court's inclined.
So what happens if you have a repeat offender that you've told 3 times not to do it? It's just a continuance of,
Yes, if there's no penalty listed in the ordinance,
Yeah, I mean,
150 times,
yeah.
I think we ought to probably put, in my opinion, some sort of penalty.
A warning without consequence is not a warning.
That's my opinion, but I didn't realize that.
What might be the language, Gerald, that we could include into this first reading that,
I'll leave that to you.
Well, I'm just throwing this out. Obviously, it's the pleasure of the court, but we could say, yeah,
first offense, warning, second offense, $100 fine. $500 fine?
I gotta just make it hurt.
Oh!
Chad, they didn't have a bridge, what,
And the
for 3
reason I-
years?
and the reason-
So the residents didn't have a bridge
Yeah, they
for
didn't have a
3
bridge
years.
for 3 years, so we
What kind
should
of fine
kind
do
of
you think they
penalize.
want?
Is there a motion on the floor? First offense, warning, second offense, $500 fine. Is there a motion? There's a motion. Is there a second?
Do we want to go this fast? I mean,
I'm just trying to move us along,
I
brother.
get it, but I get it, but I was wondering if Rand wanted a little time to consider, or
It's pretty easy. First offense, warning, second offense, $500 fine.
well, what about the,
Yeah,
what about the third
all
one?
subsequent offenses.
Yes, and I'm glad you said all
See,
subsequent.
that's what you.
There you go, Rick.
Gerald had them up to 150, so I'm going, wow.
And Judge, the reason I say that is because those people that live, those Scott Countyans on the other side of that bridge have suffered for 4 years
Oh,
because
No, I respect it.
commercial vehicles have destroyed the bridge.
And I don't disagree. You got somebody, they're probably not gonna get caught. Chances are. So the time they get caught is probably their 10th time going across with a heavy vehicle, so.
I crossed it for the first time last week, and I had a fuel truck
it
pulling off
retroactive.
of 421 gonna follow me down there. And I stopped him and told him, I said, you're not gonna make it across that bridge.
So we have a motion to
Second.
amend it on first offense, warning, second offense, and all subsequent offenses, $500 fine. It's been seconded by Kelly Corman. Do you have any other comments or questions?
No.
Does anyone else have any comments or
I do.
questions?
I just want to make sure for the sense of uniformity that, and Jared might know this, is this the only bridge that we would have no through commercial traffic on as far as any roads in Scott County? So I guess, Judge, then there's no precedent set on try to match up so we can make the fine whatever the court chooses.
Good point.
So this is first reading now.
Yeah, this will be, I'll change that, Stacy, get it to you, and then we can.
Thanks, Gerald. So there's been a motion and there's been a second as amended. Is there any other question or discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes as a first reading unanimously. Now we'll move to number 18, Ordinance 19-13, second reading, Ramsey property zone change.
Ordinance number 19-13, ordinance changing the zone from an agriculture A1 zone to a single-family residential R1A zone for 6.137 acres for property located at 2394 Cincinnati Pike, property owned by Bonnie Smith, formerly known as Bonnie Ramsey. Whereas at a public hearing held on October 10th, 2019, a petition for zoning map amendment for property located at 2394 Cincinnati Pike from an agriculture A1 zone to a single-family residential R1A zone for 6.137 acres was presented to the Georgetown Scott County Planning Commission, and the commission recommending approval of the zone change by a vote of 5 to 1. Whereas the Scott County Fiscal Court agrees with the recommendation of the Planning Commission, Whereas the recommendation of the Planning Commission is reflected in their minutes is attached to and incorporated herein by reference, now therefore be ordained by the Scott County Fiscal Court, Section 1, that the zoning ordinance of Scott County, Kentucky be amended to show a change in zone for property located at 2394 Cincinnati Pike from agriculture A1 zone to a single-family residential R1A zone for 6.137 acres. Section 2, that the conditions of approval for the zone change imposed by the Planning Commission are hereby adopted by the Fiscal Court as attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference. Section 3, that the findings of the Planning Commission which are attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference are hereby ratified and adopted by the Fiscal Court. Section 4, that the Georgetown Scott County Planning Commission is directed to show the amendment of the official zone map atlas to reflect, to make reference to the number of this ordinance. Section 5, that this ordinance shall become effective on the date of its passage. I believe first reading was December 23rd last year, and of course adopted today, assuming you January 10th.
What questions or discussion are there? Would there be a motion to accept as presented? Motion for Mr. Lyons. Is there a second? Second for Mr. Ellison. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? One opposed, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's Mr. Wallace. Motion passes. Ordinance 19-14, first reading. Personnel policy section. I'd like to ask Mr. Marshall to read that.
Do you want to say anything, Jeff, before reading this on the vacation?
Well, I want to say thank you to Rand for getting this ordinance written up.
Oh, no problem.
At a time too, I appreciate that.
Thank you for all your help.
The only change that's in this from our workshop discussion is the sentence on page 2. It says a vacation leave request should at least be 1 hour. I think there was some discussion about typically a vacation leave request is 1 hour and could be 2 to 4 based upon department needs. But so based upon the discussion, they indicated using the word should, and so I made a wording to accommodate that. So other than that, that's all I have. And
I appreciate you putting it together and Rand getting it done, and then the input from the court. I think this is another piece that helps our workers and our folks, and it's just it's a benefit that's attractive to folks, and it's a plus. So I think it's nice.
thank you.
All righty, ordinance number 19-14, the ordinance amending the county employees' vacation benefits. Whereas the county provides paid vacation time as a benefit of employment with the county, whereas the present vacation benefit is not as competitive as those typically found in other governmental agencies, and whereas the Scott County Fiscal Court desires to amend the vacation benefit to make it more competitive, now therefore it is hereby ordained by the Scott County Fiscal Court as follows. Section 1, Section 3.7B of the current administrative code entitled Vacation, parentheses, annual leave, is hereby repealed in full. Section 2, a new section 3.7B is hereby adopted as follows. Vacation leave. All regular full-time employees occupying established positions shall receive vacation leave as follows. Years of service, 0 to 4. Vacation leave earned per years and day, 12. Vacation leave earned per year in hours, 35 hours a week is 84. Vacation leave earned per year in hours, 40, 96. Vacation leave earned per year in hours, a 56-hour week is 144. 4 to 10 years. Vacation leave earned in days is 15. Per hour for a 35-hour week is 105. For a 40-hour week is 120. For a 56-hour week is 180. Years of service 10 to 15. Leave earned in days is 18. For a 35-hour work week in hours, it's 126. For a 40-hour work week, 144. For a 56-hour work week, 216. Years of service 15 or more. Vacation leave earned in years and days is 20. In hours for a 35-hour week is 140. For a 40-hour week, 160. For a 56-hour week, 240. Years of service 0 to 4. Let's see, wait a minute.
That's the same.
Okay. Vacation leave is earned on a monthly basis. Any employee who works more or less than 40 hours per week on a regular basis shall earn a prorated amount of vacation leave. An employee must be working or in a paid leave status for 1/2 or more work days in a month to earn vacation leave for the month. An employee may begin using vacation leave after 3 months of employment. If an employee is required to complete a training program upon appointment, example, sheriff and fire department. Employee must wait until training is completed before using vacation leave. Requests for vacation leave must be submitted to the supervisor according to departmental procedures or as far in advance as possible using the time and attendance system. Earned vacation shall be taken at times mutually acceptable to the employee and the supervisor. A vacation leave request should be at least 1 hour. A leave request exceeding 2 weeks must be approved by the appropriate executive authority. Vacation leave should normally be utilized during the calendar year it is earned. The calendar year begins on January 1 and ends on December 31st. Unused vacation leave may be carried forward until the next calendar year. However, any balance in excess of the current annual accrual rate will be forfeited. Upon separation of employment, a staff member may be eligible to receive payment for vacation leave that has been accrued but not used with the following stipulations. 1, the employee must provide the required proof of required period of notice as listed in the resignation of employment policy. 2, an employee who abandons a position is not eligible. 3, an employee who is involuntarily terminated for any reason other than position elimination or layoff is not eligible. 4, lastly, an eligible employee shall not be compensated for any unused vacation leave that exceeds the staff member's current annual accrual rate. The Human Resources Officer will maintain records of leave accrual, usage, and balances. Section 3, this ordinance shall become effective upon its passage and publication as required by law. First reading today, January 10th, 2020.
Any questions or discussion? I believe Jeff mentioned last week that this puts us on par with the state. And, you know, it's just, I think, a positive thing for us to do for our employees. Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve? Motion for Mr. Corman and a second for Mr. Burke. Any other questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. That will move down to 20, County ABC Administrator. I am required to name a ABC Administrator, and we would like the court to consider Michelle Ray to be appointed to that position. I believe she is well qualified and will do a fantastic job, and she's already done that. She's essentially taken charge and gotten all the requirements posted on the website, been in contact with folks in Frankfurt, worked with citizens already. So I think she's would do a great job. Is there a motion?
We've appointed her, so we just need to note it.
Well, we just need to note it in the record. So.
Does that come with a badge and a gun?
No badge. We'll get her a badge. Now, she'd have to have additional training if we gave her a gun.
It was a judge's appointment, so she's sworn in.
Yes. Let the record reflect that then. And then number 21, street light request, District 1. I turn to our friend and colleague, Rick Hostetler, to give us some insight in this, and Jared Holland.
I'll give you a few pages of information really quickly in a nutshell. I've been contacted by a couple of citizens for a street light or something at the intersection of Burton Pike and US 25 north out here. Burton Pike is a hill, and you top a hill and you're right there at US 25, and there's a bank on the side of the road, and this time of year, especially at night, it's a little bit shadowy and a little bit unsafe. And so I did a little research, and I found at least one other place in the county, and it's out on before I give you the wrong place, I wrote it down here, on 62 and Fennel. And thanks to Jared, he was a huge help, and Stacy. We kind of went back to find the minutes, or they did, and the discussion back then was a stoplight or a flashing light or a street light that just illuminates, and they chose a street light for that application, and I think that's sufficient in my view to be up to the court. In this application, will illumine that intersection, and everybody can see it when they're coming. It's a little bit blindsided, like I say, especially wintertime, cloudy night. The utility company, well, both of those are state roads. We contacted the state as well. They have no problem with it because it's Kentucky Utility and they own the poles. So we've contacted Kentucky Utilities, and here's the last piece of information. If the court so chooses, the the charge on it. They didn't have any of the taxes and fees in it, but it's around $18 a month for a street light.
No upfront installation cost.
No, that's, they install, and they install it. There's some paperwork, I think, Jared, you have to remind me on that you'll probably have to sign, or maybe Stacy.
The judge will have to put on letterhead that we approve those
That's,
expenditures.
yeah. Whatever the court's desire is, it'll have to come from your letterhead.
Okay.
And,
What questions or discussion are there in regards to this request?
And maintenance of it too, they'll take care of the maintenance. of it.
yes, yeah. Basically, if we approve it, they send us a bill and they mount the light, take care of the light.
Safety issue for $18 a month seems pretty easy to me.
Would you like to make the motion, Mr.
I
Costello?
do.
Would you like to second it, Mr. Corman? We got a motion and we have a second. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we move to number 22, new business and public comment. Is there any new business that anyone on the court would like to bring to the body?
Judge, just one thing, the street light made me think of this. I'm not sure that District 7 has relayed to you. This body, about a year and a half ago, requested a stoplight at Long Lick, and where the new bypass is going to get, where that intersects. My understanding is about a month or two ago, they have decided they're going to put a roundabout in that area, big enough to handle semi-trucks and that type of thing. I didn't know if you were aware of that, but.
I'd heard rumor, but I had not had official notification.
Yeah, I think that's been their plan for a long time.
Yeah.
I talked to them.
So it was in line with what Rick was saying.
I'm sure they've done their due diligence and feel like that'll handle that intersection. I appreciate you sharing that. Anything else? Gerald Porter. Captain, how are you?
Just fantastic, Judge. Again, sorry for interrupting your meeting at the thing and not getting on the agenda. I'm good about that. But anyway, I just wanted to step up real quick. I had one compound of things that I needed to bring up. First, as some of you may or may not know, starting this month, our sheriff, Tony Hampton, is serving as president of the Kentucky Sheriff's Association for the year 2020. Was elected by his peers.
Speech.
The second part of that is, as such, he will be requested to appear a few times this year, representative of the state of Kentucky at national board meetings, that kind of thing. The first of which is going to be the National Sheriff's Association's Winter Legislative Conference, which takes place in Washington, D.C. And that will be in February. The entire thing is for the 8th to the 12th. I don't know that we look at being gone that long, but I did want to bring up and ask for travel permission or whatever for him and I to attend this conference. And then, like I said, there will be a couple more instances throughout the year. But
Question for Mr. Burke.
I was gonna make the motion that we approve the travel.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? A second from Mr. Hostetler. Any other questions?
Do you need a driver?
Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any other questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes for travel. I appreciate your all's efforts, and thank you very much. Congratulations, or condolences.
Yeah.
Oh. I can't go out that way? All right. Any other new business or public comment from anyone? Mike, Chief Fuller?
Yes, sir, I got one real quick. I meant to talk about it the other day, and it was a special call meeting, but our firefighter who had been in the hospital has got out of the hospital. He's in West Virginia, I believe, with his... Okay, so he's back here. But he turned around pretty well, and he's out. Still got a long recovery, but just want to let everybody know that thanks for the prayers and well wishes, and hopefully everything continues to go all right.
Thanks for the update and continued prayers and thoughts for him. Anybody else? With that said, is there a motion to adjourn?
Nope.
Tell Ashton Burke, that looks better on YouTube. JR and Dave have a strength.
Yeah, we do have, we'll talk about that, and we probably need to highlight that, so. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion from Mr. Burke, second from Mr. Lyons. Any other questions? All those in favor?
All's
Any
closed, the ayes
opposed? We are adjourned.